OCD can convince you within a matter of seconds that it is real. That's what it does. That is the nature of the disorder. Within seconds, you can be convinced that you are going to jail for the rest of your life. Within seconds, you can be convinced that you're going to be stuck forever. Within seconds, you can be convinced that you have cancer and you're going to be dead within a month. That is how quickly it can change and operate. 1 minute you may be doing okay, maybe quite a calm state, and all of a sudden, what about this thing 10 years ago? That means I'm going to jail. That means I have to confess. That means I have to vent. That means I have to look for reassurance. That's what it's going to do. Hence why, when we act on how we feel, we don't make that rational decision, because we base it solely on chasing relief, getting rid of an uncomfortable feeling. I'm sure you can relate to that, because as soon as you're triggered, it suddenly feels like your world is falling apart. It suddenly feels like your brain is about to explode. It suddenly feels like you are crumbling. That's how intense and how real it feels. If you try and explain that to someone about OCD, they wouldn't understand, because yes, I can explain it to you. However, the feeling, the in-depth experience of that, where it's literally a click of the fingers, convinced that you're going to die, convinced that you're going to be stuck forever and then you're back to square one, convinced that there is no hope, convincing that it's all a waste of time, nothing else matters. That's how it feels. I look back at my journey, and I remember being at football a lot, and I talk about this a lot, being at football matches, and I was being quite invested in the game, watching the game, and all of a sudden my brain scanned, it found something in the past, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, a couple of days ago, and convinced that I'm going to jail, convinced that my life's over, convinced that nothing else matters, convinced that it's all a waste of time. And that's what it's going to do, because it's always going to try and steal that current moment away from you. It's always going to try and ruin that current moment. Many times I was out on a date with my partner, all going okay, not too bad, and boom, suddenly latches something. What as if this isn't the right relationship for you? What as if only if they knew about this thing in the past, only if they knew about the intrusive thought that you just had, or were having a lot. It's always going to do that. And then that is why I went down the confession cycle, because I couldn't sit with that uncomfortable feeling. I couldn't sit with that sudden 0 to 100 catastrophizing. We have to get used to that. We have to get comfortable with that. It's all a key part of the journey. Because let's say as soon as you're triggered, as soon as you're feeling crap, as soon as you're feeling on edge, you then confess, you then vent, you then seek reassurance. You then Google, you then complain. As soon as you do that, you're given OCD power, because it's got you exactly where it wants you. It's got you then going from that left to right, extreme emotions. Okay, how do I get relief? That is not the way forward, because you'll be doing that all day long. If you try and get that quick relief, that isn't going to come. OCD never delivers on its promises. It's going to say to you, yeah, one more bit of reassurance, one more confession, one more question, then it'll all be gone. It doesn't work like that, okay? We have to let it scan. We have to let it morph, change, move around. It's going to try and find things. It's going to try and look for that next step, that thing you cannot accept. That's what it does. So that is going to feel convincingly, overwhelmingly real. If it didn't, you wouldn't be watching this video today, because you could just say, yeah, OCD, thoughts are thoughts, don't worry about it. It doesn't work like that. Within a matter of seconds, it's going to convince you that your worst fear, your worst case scenario is real, that it's true, that it's happened, that it's going to happen. And that is exactly what it does. Okay? And we're looking back, so maybe going on holiday, or things that I was so desperate to enjoy. And then it would completely convince me that what is the point of this holiday, because nothing's real in life. What's the point of this holiday, because you're the only one on this planet, when I was at existential OCD, when it felt like, well, there's no point in enjoying this holiday, because you're not going to feel in the moment anyway. You're not going to feel connected anyway. So it's always looking to take that moment away from you. Like, you could travel the world, you could do all the things you want to do, but OCD is always going to look, well, what's the point? It don't matter because of this. I had that a lot with like the time concept and the fear of death, where, well, what's the point of enjoying this moment, because I'm going to be dead anyway? There's no logic behind that. There's no rationale behind that. But within that moment, when that latches, it feels like your whole life is falling apart. It's got you exactly where it wants you, because you are so consumed in trying to figure that out. You are so consumed in analysing that, in trying to work it out. The present moment then escapes you. This present moment then goes by, because you are so stuck in your head. It's like a sudden, hit back, where that overwhelming feel, right, let's work this out. No, that's how it's going to feel. It's going to feel automatic. Let it feel automatic, but try not to engage with that. The only reason you ruminate is because of the fears, the core fears, the beliefs. Over time, they're going to need work on. hear loads of dogs running at me. If I suddenly get taken out by a dog, then you'll know why. All of a sudden, we've got some dogs are huge nowadays, up to about here. If they jumped at me, I'd be on the floor. So just remember that although you could be having a good day, which is great, and that's good, but OCD can pounce at any time. And that's not to scare you, that's just the reality of the disorder. It's always looking to latch, it's always looking to scan for something, right? It's always looking for something in the past that you haven't thought of yet. It can convince you that there's one thing in the past you didn't think much about. It can then twist that, it can manipulate that, it can completely, like I said, twist it and convince you that, well, yes, I'm pretty sure it didn't happen, but then what if it did happen? What if I can't remember? What if I was drunk? It's always going to scan for ages, maybe when you're 12 to 15, where you can't quite remember as you're developing. Drunk moments, times where you don't have that clarity, times where you don't have that certainty. It's always scanning for that. What if I didn't know this? What if I just realised this was real? Oh my God, that means I've got to confess. That means I've got to go to jail for the rest of my life. That is how it's going to feel. I live like that for years. Brain on a loop, scanning for something that means my life is over, that I was finished, all was a waste of time. That is how it's going to feel. Okay? So it's very important to let it do that, okay? Although that sounds the opposite, we have to let it do that, because as soon as you try and intervene, as soon as you step in and try and work it out, you are giving power to OCD, because you are engaging in the cycle, okay? So the important thing is let that play out, but look at the belief that it's stemming on. What is it fueling on? Well, it's fueling on the fear of going to jail. It's fueling on the fear of losing connection, the fear of being rejected, the fear that your life is over, the fear that life's a waste of time. It's going to go after that, okay? So spend that energy breaking down that fear on paper. Think of the unconditional acceptance that you read about in the books, okay? Rather than going into the confession, going into the reassurance, going into the compulsive cycle and trying to work out this one last time, because this one last time will be the millionth last time. It doesn't just stop at one last time, as we all know. Okay, so let your brain do that. Let it go crazy. Let it run riot. It's going to be screaming and shouting at you. Remember my early days of my journey when I was convinced to not engage in the cycle. That was incredibly tough because it feels so automatic, right? But it felt like OCD was kicking and screaming, throwing its toys at the pram, because it had me in a cycle where I had to confess. You know, confession was my drug, as I talk about a lot. Talking about how I felt all the time. Talking about every thought, every feeling, every real event, every false memory in the past. Talking about that 24/7. So that urge, that was a very addictive urge. Same as the drug addict being addicted to drugs. That's how it felt. Same as an alcoholic being addicted to alcohol, right? It felt like I had no other option. It felt like I had no other choice. It felt like I had to confess in this moment to get relief. But bit by bit, I had to break that down and get used to not confessing. Now, could you imagine how comfortable that was? How crap I felt? I remember being out at times, my brain literally felt like I was about to explode. It felt like I was seconds away from a panic attack at all times, 24/7, right? I had to get used to that feeling, because people see where I am today. They see all of us on the team and they think it was just a breeze. They think it was just a walk in the park. No, we've been to the edge and back of OCD, complete rock bottom. I wouldn't be able to relate to you if I hadn't been there. Okay, I haven't just read a book on OCD and gone, oh yeah, that sounds tough, do this. No, we've been there, we've lived that, we've experienced that. Been to the depths of hell. And I think relatability is key, because when you're speaking to someone who has been there, when you're speaking to someone who knows what it's like to be in your shoes, is very important. Because not for a second don't think that I think it's going to be easy, that I think it's going to be comfortable making these changes. When you're making belief changes and behavioural changes, I know that is going to feel like hell. That is going to feel like the last thing you want to do. When you're so used to doing reassurance, if you suddenly cut that, you're going to feel crap. There's no other way about it. It's going to be very, very bumpy. It's going to be very, very challenging. It's going to be 1 minute totally anxious, next minute completely numb. Then there's going to be panicking, then there's going to be running out the building crying, then there's going to be crying to your partner, there's going to be rolling around on the floor. All these different things. That's how it's going to go, right? It's not just, oh yeah, a bit anxious today, that's fine. It's going to feel like I can't even function, completely debilitating. That's how it's going to feel, right? But going back to the cliche saying, short-term pain for long-term gain, because if you can build that frustration tolerance now, if you can maybe have a few shit years now, months now, shit holidays, shit occasions, shit birthdays, shit Christmases, if you can get through those days now, you are doing yourself a world of good for the future, because A, you're building that frustration tolerance, B, you're showing your brain that what you perceive as scary isn't actually scary. Yes, you don't like the feeling, but all it is a feeling. It's not this worst thing in the world. And C, you are getting used to that feeling. Whoops, nearly went. But you're showing, you're highlighting yourself what you're scared of. So the content of the rumination, the content of the thoughts is highlighting to you what you're scared of, okay? And that's what you can take away and apply the rational thinking to that, applying the unconditional acceptance to that. Because remember, OCD takes orders from belief. The reason it suddenly feels convincingly real within a matter of seconds is because you see that as the worst case scenario. It's scanning for that thing that you see that you cannot currently accept. Oh my God, jail would be the worst thing ever. How on earth can I do that? OCD is going to look for anything in the past to convince you that you've gone to jail. Nearly went again. I'm going to go one day on these videos. And I promise you, I will upload this video even if I fall over, because it would be absolutely hilarious. So, when in that moment, when it feels overwhelmingly real, just remember, it's all stemming from beliefs. It's going after your worst case scenario. So the logic lies in breaking down the worst case scenario. Going towards making peace for the worst case scenario. Not agreeing with it, not justifying the worst case scenario, not wanting the worst case scenario, not liking the worst case scenario. You can strongly hate, strongly disagree, strongly condemn the worst case scenario, the thing you cannot accept. But as soon as we say, that thing must not happen to me, as soon as we say, that thing's awful, that thing is the worst thing in the world, OCD is going to run riot and cause chaos. That's what it does, okay? Unconditional acceptance is often the missing part to OCD recovery. Because, as I've said many times, OCD nestles just out of reach on that thing you cannot currently accept. That thing that feels too much. Nope, life would be over, waste of time. What's the point of living? I can't live with myself. I couldn't live with the guilt. I couldn't live with the feelings, the sensations. It's always looking to do that, okay? It all stems down to beliefs. Let your brain play out. Let it scan. Let it try and convince you within seconds. We have to get used to that feeling. Do not try and step in and intervene, because as soon as we do that, we fuel the compulsive cycle.